Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor, and we begin tonight with the state of our military, more specifically, the politicization of our military. New report from our friends at Heritage Foundation shows that this is a growing problem. Let's get right to it. Point number one, 68% of active military members have witnessed for themselves politicization in the military. 65% of active duty members are somewhat or very concerned about this. And most specifically, the events that have decreased the trust for active duty members have to do with, this is by a factor of 80%, the policy to allow unrestricted service by transgender individuals, the reduction of physical fitness standards, and a focus on climate change as a growing threat. Quoting now from one of the observers of this report, it's more clear than ever that Americans are losing faith in what should be America's most trusted institution, and the current recruitment crisis facing our military is evidence of that. The Pentagon should be focused on winning America's future wars rather than prioritizing divisive programs and issues. The Pentagon should be focused on how best to counter our global threats. That quote from Representative Michael Waltz. He's a former Green Beret, and he joins us now. Well, Congressman Waltz, I mean, you said it pretty clearly there. This is a very real problem, isn't it?
It is, and we're now facing the military's worst recruiting crisis since Vietnam. The Army had to lower its goals by 10,000 and then fell another 15,000 short. And we have no indication that it's going to get any better in the coming year. So this poll from Heritage, which I worked with them on and am working with them on a commission to look at all of this, is good because it puts data behind what we suspected. When you have the first African-American Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, state that the military is becoming overrun with white supremacy and order a military-wide training stand down, but then a year later shows that less than 0.00004% of the military is actually engaging in any extremism. We have a problem with narratives, and we have a problem with our senior leadership that are putting out to the country that it's overcome with white supremacy, that therefore we have to prioritize things like diversity, equity, inclusion when the data doesn't show that to be the case. The commander-in-chief is saying that climate is our number one threat, when actually the Chinese military buildup is the number one threat. And then we get a strategy from the Secretary of the Army to take all of our tanks electric by 2025. So our military members are seeing this isn't serious. Our recruits are seeing this isn't serious. Their parents are seeing the politicization. And at the end of the day, this is why we are where we are in the middle of a recruiting and retention crisis.
Congressman, I remember when the Secretary made those statements, and he specifically pointed to certain things like, you know, a Gadsden flag or a historic Confederate battle flag as being an indication that maybe you're intolerant or you're an extremist. I remember seeing people comment on social media at the time that, you know, those men and women who drive pickups that might have a little bumper sticker, the Confederate flag, those are the men and women who wear our uniform. They're the ones who have been fighting these fights. And isn't the key here not what bumper sticker you have or what flag you might fly in your house? The issue is, what do you do when you're doing your job? What actually shows up in the military?
That's right. And what we're seeing is this Pentagon conflate what people do or say in their own personal time and then what they do in uniform on the job. And what the Pentagon's own study showed was that less than 100 members of the military out of 2.5 million have engaged in any form of extremism. The military lost more people to car accidents. And yet we have this wholesale shift. Look, in the Army that I grew up in, with 27 years of service, we left our politics at the door. It didn't matter about black, white, brown, gay, straight, Christian, Jewish. None of those things mattered. It was about mission and the fact that we were all serving the red, white, and blue and moving the country forward and taking care of each other to defeat our nation's enemies. And I'm telling you, with a Republican-led Congress, I will be on the Armed Services Committee. We're going to get this military back to warfighting. And to your point, the recruiting base tends to be in the South and the Midwest, and they want to jump out of planes, drive ships, and kick in doors. They're not worried about all of this other nonsense that is being imposed on them by the political leadership of the military.
What are your specific concerns about the, I think it was described as radical inclusion policies with regard to transgender individuals specifically? Is this a military readiness issue? What's the concern?
Well, look, I mean, we have the Air Force Academy telling its cadets to not say mom and dad, to say parent, to not say boyfriend, girlfriend, to say partner. I mean, there's kind of this obsession, and yet I can't get any data from the Pentagon showing that there is some kind of systemic discrimination against transgenders. Look, at the end of the day, it's about standards. And what is the standard to be an infantryman or woman, to be a pilot, to be a cyber warrior? And that's what we have to focus to. Again, the enemy's bullets don't care if you're a transgender pilot. And therefore, we just need the best pilots.
Right.
And that's what we should be focused on. You treat everyone with respect, and those that make the standards make the cut, and that's it. But instead, we're introducing all of this other nonsense.
Yeah, let's talk about lowering standards in terms of having the best pilots or having the best infantrymen, Congressman, because there is a palpable reduction in physical standards now to sort of widen the playing field and bring in as many people as possible, which is, again, a noble goal. But when it comes to actually having the best and fittest fighting force, one has to question whether that's the soundest decision.
You know, as we saw with 20 years of the Middle East wars, as you're seeing right now in Ukraine, combat isn't a video game. It is urban. It is brutal. It is hand-to-hand. And it takes a certain physical standard to be able to carry a 200-pound soldier, up flights of stairs to get them onto a helicopter. So what we mandated in the last defense bill was for the military to set its physical standards to what it takes to do the job. It's obviously very different to be in the infantry than it is to be a cyber warrior or a supply clerk.
Sure.
So let's set it to the job and take race, religion, social economic background, all of that falls to the wayside. And who makes the cut makes the cut. That's what the nation deserves when it's spending its defense dollars.
Congressman, I think that there's a hope that all this stuff, that this is coming out of the Pentagon. They're politicians. The brass just needs to make certain congressmen or senators happy. But when all is said and done, the guys are going to get the job done. They're going to focus on their mission, and they're going to sort of ignore all. Yeah, sure, they'll sit through a briefing about this stuff, but in the long run, it's not really going to affect things when push comes to shove. Yeah,
no, look, this is an assault on a warrior culture. Everything from toxic masculinity most warfare is now going to be remote. Physical standards don't really matter. That the military has to perfectly reflect the makeup of American society. By the way, there's more minorities in the military than there are in American society. At the end of the day, I think this dilutes this over-focus on things like climate and transgender and all of, lowering of physical standards is diluting the warfighting capability. Yeah. And it's turning away recruits and people who want to focus on winning our wars are getting out and telling their kids, which was also shown in the poll, to not join.
Yeah.
So it is having a dramatic effect, and that's why Congress is going to take action to reverse this course.
Congressman Michael Waltz, thank you for joining us, and apparently he's sticking with the beard. You're watching Go Cutter tonight. More to come on Salem.